People couldn't believe what they were seeing that morning. A quiet neighborhood suddenly turned into a scene of pure drama when a woman from the HOA, known by many for her bossy attitude, was caught cutting the lock on a man's Jeep. She thought no one was watching, but little did she know, the vehicle wasn't just an ordinary car, it was being used by a police task force. What started as a petty act of control was about to spiral into something far bigger than she ever imagined. The man who owned the Jeep was used to her behavior. For months, she had complained about everything he did, where he parked, how he decorated his porch, even the kind of flowers he planted. But the Jeep was his pride, his project, and his escape. She couldn't stand it parked where it was, and one day, she decided she'd had enough. Marching down the street with bolt cutters in her hand, she looked around with arrogance, believing she had the power to do whatever she wanted. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, shocked but too scared to confront her directly. With one sharp snap, the lock fell to the ground. She swung open the latch and prepared to move the Jeep, convinced she had just won another battle against the men she secretly despised. But in that very moment, an unmarked car rolled slowly around the corner. Inside sat members of the local police task force, who had been monitoring the vehicle for weeks as part of a larger operation. Their eyes narrowed, and confusion spread among them. Why was this woman tampering with a car they were using in an undercover mission? The man rushed out of his house, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. He shouted at her, demanding to know why she thought she had the right to cut his lock. She smirked, tossing her hair back as if she was above the rules. "This vehicle doesn't belong here," she sneered. But before she could take another step, the police task force officers got out of their car and walked straight toward her. The atmosphere turned heavy, neighbors held their breath, and suddenly, her smug confidence began to crumble. The officers surrounded the Jeep, inspecting the damage she had caused. They asked the man if he knew what she had just interfered with. He explained the endless harassment he had endured from the HOA and how this Jeep was more than just transportation, it had been loaned for community policing work. As the truth came out, the woman's face drained of color. She realized she hadn't just crossed a line with her neighbor, she had interfered with law enforcement property. One officer turned to her, his voice stern but calm. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you've just done?" he asked. She stammered, trying to explain herself, claiming it was all just about HOA rules and community standards. But her excuses fell flat. The neighbors who had remained silent for so long now stepped outside, one by one, adding their voices to the story. They spoke of her bullying, her endless complaints, and how she had tormented families in the neighborhood. The weight of her reputation was finally catching up to her. The man stood tall for the first time in months. For once, he wasn't alone in facing her wrath. The HOA's power that she had abused for years was crumbling before everyone's eyes. The task force officers exchanged looks, documenting every detail of what had just happened. The woman tried to back away, but the eyes of the entire neighborhood followed her. For the first time, she felt the sharp sting of accountability, and no excuse could save her now. As the evening settled in, word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People whispered about how the HOA's strongest enforcer had finally been caught in her own trap. The man, once isolated and ridiculed, found new respect from his neighbors. The Jeep remained exactly where it had been, this time guarded by both the man's resolve and the presence of the task force. The woman disappeared from sight that night, her once loud voice replaced by an uncomfortable silence. But everyone knew this was far from the end, because the police were now involved, and consequences were coming that no HOA rulebook could erase.